Good afternoon. My name is Mike Reilly. I'm the ranking minority member of the Cities Committee, and I'm standing here with my colleagues, and especially my colleague from Staten Island, Assemblyman Michael Tanusis, who's also a member of the Cities Committee. We wanted to address some of the issues and the statements from the mayor during the budget hearing that we just held. One of the things that I raised was the ability of the mayor to issue executive orders. He issued an executive order back in October of 2022, which was in regards to the asylum migrant crisis. He actually used his executive powers to take away the ability for homeless shelters to be able to put migrants in those shelters. I asked him if he would commit to doing the same thing, taking the same action by executive order, allowing the NYPD to coordinate with ICE to remove those migrants and asylum seekers who commit violent acts, violent felonies, commit retail theft ongoing, multiple offenses, and just what we've seen recently with the attack on the New York City police officers in Times Square. I think that was the major concern that many of us had. And I point blank asked him, would you take action? And he would not commit to it. I think that is something where he raised an issue, and I think we need to address that even further. I think that would be a step in the right direction, making sure that there's an executive order that allows the NYPD to communicate with ICE, because ICE is saying that the communication is the issue. Now, he also brought up the issue of the lawsuit in Staten Island that was in regards to right to shelter. I point blank told him that the city appealed the decision on Staten Island that would have gave him the out for right to shelter. He chose to appeal that decision and then file a separate court action in Manhattan, which is still ongoing. He took away the opportunity for him to have a result that could help our city and our state financially. He failed in that action because of that appeal. And that is my opinion. And I will continue to call on him to make sure that he takes the necessary steps, especially that executive order. So what I'd like to do is now turn it over to my colleague, Assemblyman Michael Tanusis.
Thank you. I'm Assemblyman Michael Tanusis. I represent the East Shore of Staten Island and a portion of Bay Ridge, Brooklyn. A few days ago, some migrants assaulted New York City police officers. Even though there were 14 people involved in that incident, 6 people were arrested and charged. The Manhattan District Attorney's Office only asked for 1 individual for bail to be set, even though individuals on that crowd had prior open cases and are alleged to be actual gang members in their native countries. So we are in a situation where the policies of New York City have affected us drastically. From the fact that migrants are coming in the thousands to New York, the city of New York is required to house them, to fund them, to feed them, and now we are suffering also from the fact that we are a sanctuary city. So if anyone decides to come to New York City, they will now be able to commit a crime and not face any type of deportation proceedings. These were laws passed by the New York City Council and signed into law by Mayor de Blasio. We are here today calling on the New York City Council and the mayor to reverse these laws. People that come here illegally, I'm sure a vast majority of people that come here with good intentions, just like my parents did. My parents came here legally. But some of them do not come here with good intentions. Some of them are gang members. They commit crimes. Some of those crimes are on video. Those people should be deported. We are calling on the mayor and the city council to allow the NYPD, and we are calling on the district attorney's offices to work with ICE so these individuals not only could be held accountable for their actions, but could also be deported back to their countries of origin. I also want to address District Attorney Alvin Bragg. The district attorney believes that he was elected to be a public defender. He is not doing right by the people of New York City. And I call on the mayor and the governor to take action to ensure that the right thing is done by the district attorney for the people of this city. Thank you.
So I wanted to raise some legislation that my colleagues, some of them standing behind me today, have introduced. We have Assemblymember Slater has introduced legislation that would allow the state and municipalities to have a registry of those that are here seeking asylum. And I think that's a good way of ensuring that we have some accountability in the process. Another colleague of mine, Assemblymember Gandolfo, has introduced legislation that would remove sanctuary city status and mandate that law enforcement cooperate with federal immigration services. These are just two examples of the solutions that we are presenting. You know, you take a look at this picture. Hold all criminals accountable. That's what this is about. This isn't just about migrants. This isn't just about asylum seekers. This is about holding people accountable that violate our laws. That's the important step here. What this person did here, he's not only giving the finger to the media that was covering him coming out after he was released after not being set on bail. He's giving the finger to all of New York, the taxpayers. And what is the mayor doing now? He's going to give them debit cards to pay for everything they want. Their food, their vehicles. Are they going to sell them and give them to someone else and keep the cash? We don't know. Where's the accountability going to be in that program? You know, this sounds an awfully lot like aiding and abetting. And that's the reality people are going to see. We are actually going to reward bad behavior, because are they going to check and make sure that those who are arrested and assaulted police officers, robbed elderly, committed retail theft continuously aren't getting those cards? They're not. So it's our job and our duty to hold them accountable. And that's why we are here today. We are here today to address the issues and to bring real solutions. So thank you. Any questions?
Governor Hochul said repeatedly that, is this something you consider calling up on your Republican colleagues in D.C. about real immigration reform? Some Democrats have said the same, that the solution really comes from D.C. Has that been something you've considered, and what's your response to Governor Hochul's?
So obviously, the biggest issue here is that our border is not secure. So the President of the United States, not just our colleagues in Congress, the President of the United States has a duty to secure the borders of his nation. That has not happened. As far as the sanctuary city status, that has nothing to do with the federal government. That has to do with the policy set forth by the City of New York and by New York State. These two bills that we just spoke about would get rid of the sanctuary city status, because the choice of whether to cooperate with ICE or not is from the City of New York. They have chosen not to cooperate with ICE. So when you have individuals such as this who are going out there and committing crimes and are also alleged to be gang members, there is nothing ICE can do about it, because the City of New York has prohibited the New York City Police Department from cooperating with federal agents.
And just to touch on that too, it also prohibits the Department of Corrections. So those that are here illegally and they come out of Rikers, the Department of Corrections cannot notify ICE. You could just Google it and you'll see articles about it. The way ICE finds out is the way we find out when you report it in the news. That's just reprehensible. There's no reason why we shouldn't have transparency and communication.
I have a quick question. They have I heard a proposal from someone who went to the border, and they said that they can only process 40 people a day going through the process, the dilapidated building that they built in the 50s. Now there's a proposal that someone suggested to maybe build an Ellis Island type of building down on the southern border, so that they could process a lot more like they did when, in the 40s and 50s. And I was wondering what you thought of Ellis Island type of structure so that it could increase the process.
It's not about processing. It's about securing the border. I'll give you an example. When somebody comes to this country to visit, for example, they apply for what is called a tourist visa. If these are going to be individuals that are seeking asylum from their country of origin, understood, then that's something that we should be building towards instead of people having to wait 10 years, for example, to have an asylum hearing with the federal government, right? Because that's the wait right now. We have to secure the border. We need more patrol agents, and there needs to be, because at this point, the only thing that's happening is that they're coming through. There's absolutely no type of vetting whatsoever. And by the way, one thing that you could see from the individuals that assaulted the police officers, as soon as they were released, they went to a not-for-profit, and they were able to give fake names, right? And then they fled to Texas. So what type of vetting is happening?
But is there
Nothing.
only one solution, or could there be more
It's a
than one
multifaceted solution. That is one ability, but we have to be able to tighten the border to see who is coming into this country. Not just setting up a processing center that, okay, you come in, what's your name, go. Come in, what's your name, go. No, it has to be secure.
But they do health tests and they do other.
Well, that's
Yes,
gonna be on the
that'd
federal
be part
government
of
to
it,
help.
yes.
Right.
Yes.
So
Bring
is
that
it
together.
fair to say that you guys would support the governor removing DA Bragg?
We call upon the governor to ensure, through the powers that she has, that DA Bragg does his job properly. And time again, the district attorney of Manhattan has proven that he is not able to do his job properly. So I'll leave it up to the governor, but the governor has to step in, do her job, use her powers, and she has to do that for the people of Manhattan. Because time and time again, he has shown to be more of a political operative and a public defender than he has to show that he's the district attorney of basically one of the most prestigious positions in the whole country as district attorney.
What should funding look like in the budget? I know that there's been several concerns raised around the Republican conference about the amount of money the governor's proposing, but given that the federal government, some Democrats are concerned they're not going to come through, what kind of money do you think should be allocated in the budget to handle the migrant crisis?
Well, I think that's a very complicated question because it is, where is that money going? How is it being spent? Are we wasting money? Some of these numbers that we had, I mean, one of our shelters in my district, on Father Capodanno, we had to do a FOIL request to actually get information. That shelter happens to be run by a not-for-profit Homes for the Homeless, and they did a contract with the city. That contract revealed to be for 3 years about $28 million, I believe, right? So I'm not a big believer of just throwing money onto the problem, right? We have to figure out a long-term solution. Money is not endless, right? For a few years here in New York State, we were able to receive certain federal funds. At that time, we had warned our colleagues, do not overspend. Save this money for a rainy day. And what did our colleagues do? They overspent. The whole, I believe it's been the last 10 years, 15 years, the budget has increased tremendously every single year. So now when we have this migrant crisis, now the numbers are getting even more exorbitant. Well, at some point we're going to run out of funds. So do I support giving funds in regards to the migrant crisis at some point? Yes, of course we do. We have to for the city of New York. But the federal government needs to step in, and we need to think of long-term solutions to see a light at the end of the tunnel.
So we're also going to be going back into the hearing, and I know that we're going to have the city controller testify before us. You know, those are going to be some of the questions we're going to ask about what type of contracts are related to the migrant shelters, to the migrant crisis. What are we doing? You know, Mike mentioned before, Homes for the Homeless, right? The spot that he's talking about, Island Shores, was a senior residence. They closed that senior residence a few months earlier, right? And then all of a sudden, they said they were going to sell it to another senior resident provider. They didn't. They held on to that land. They held on to that building. And then as soon as the city was able to give a contract for a migrant shelter, they jumped on it for $28 million. This isn't the first time that Homes for the Homeless has done the bait and switch. In Manhattan, they did the same exact thing 5 years ago. They kicked out the seniors and they opened up a homeless shelter. Matter of fact, there was a senator who actually said that he was appalled by what happened with Homes for the Homeless, and he thought it was reprehensible. And I couldn't believe 5 years later when I was giving a press conference that I used his quote. Bad home. I would have never thought I'd agree with him. But let me tell you, I agree with them 1,000% on that. When you have a not-for-profit that looks to help your community, and they're helping your seniors, but they look at the bottom line and kick the seniors out so they can make a more lucrative agreement to house migrants, you have a problem. Your vision, your values, and what you stand for as a board are suspect. And that is something that we are going to continue to raise, and we're going to highlight.
There are
Any
calls
other-
for the governor to put the Guard down in Texas. Your thoughts on that, to activate the National Guard?
I believe that the National Guard is already there. As it comes, I'm sure that we have some from New York that were activated and went down. Actually, I say that we have the president can actually use his authority to use all 50 states' National Guards. Why not activate them if you need to use them? There's the ability. You don't need a governor to do that. The federal government can do it. I was a member of the Army Reserve, so I understand exactly what that entails.
Any reaction to the night show raid this morning?
I don't have.
We don't have enough information
I don't
on
have
it yet.
enough information about it, but from what I did see, from the reports that I saw in the media, I saw that Homeland Security investigators were involved. I think that I'm wondering to see what kind of nexus that may have to some of the issues that we're talking about today. We don't know the specific details, but we'll see. What is there, like 50 people, I think, that were arrested from NYCHA?
Yeah.
So
Has
in regard
anyone-
to contracts and
Has
things like that.
anyone here gone down to the border to see hands-on, feet on the ground, what's going on?
We have not.
Anyone?
I don't know if any of my colleagues have. I've spent significant time in my district with my constituents fighting against the migrant shelters that the city of New York has decided to put there. That's where I've been spending my time. Our congresswoman has gone down to the border. I'm sure there's been federal elected colleagues that have gone down to the border. My job is not to go down to the border. My job is to take care of my assembly district because of what is happening in our city. And in response to your question, sir, in regards to the National Guard, the fact that we have to send the National Guard from New York State down to Texas is a biggest failure of the federal government. With all the tax money that my constituents and everyone here spends, and we have to send the National Guard of New York State to secure our border, is the biggest disgrace I have ever heard of.
Is this more than just a border issue? Some Democrats have said this is also a big issue of immigration reform in D.C. Is that something you consider?
This
talk
is-
to your colleagues and congressmen in D.C.
This is a failure of a border issue coupled with the policies set forth by the Democratic majority in the city council and in New York State. That's what this is. It's a failure on all fronts because the border is allowing people to come in, and then thanks to the policies that we have in place in New York City, there's nothing we could do. We have to house them, we have to feed them, we have to give them all types of services. So it's a combination of those two failures. Any other questions?
Thank you.
All right, thank you
you so
guys.
much.
Thank you so much.